The Worm of Iuur, Story 3, from Tales of the Mzextane, by Samuel Planck. Don't worry, little buddy, I've got you. The moon Odd had passed through the ice rings around its mother planet Shim, and thus the deluge had finished. Steam rose from the jungle soil as the night's torrential rains were dried by the dawn. The asphalt paving around the penal colony cube was drying out. Worms, lost and confused after a wet night of exploring, wriggled to escape the hot pavement and plunge back into the cooling loam. Most of them were headed in the wrong direction, or lay stunned by the rising sun shining through the canopy. No worms, however, would be abandoned to shrivel and die on the asphalt. All would be gracefully returned to the moist jungle soil, for Non-Funk 15 was their angel of mercy. There you go, pal. The non-functional human being knelt and deposited the worm he carried in his hands into the wet grass. The worm squiggled around and plopped beneath the blades of vegetation soaked in dew. Then it burrowed underground, the beneficiary of Non-Funk 15's freely given salvation. It would emerge again at night, when the orbit of Odd would once again take the moon through the moist rings around the planet Shem. Non-Funk 15 was powerfully muscled and dressed in the simple green coveralls of the penal colony resident. With ease and grace, he knelt, scooped up the worms on the asphalt, and deposited them in the soil. He did this over and over, as if it were a bizarre sports relay. He spoke to them as he did so. "I've got you, buddy. It's going to be okay. Hellsynth is here. I've got your back." There was the rumble of a jeep crushing the plants beneath it. A horn blared. "Oh no, you've got to be kidding me! Non-Funk 15, not again with the damn worms!" Though he did not pause in his rescue effort, Non-Funk 15 looked up at the other two Non-Funks sitting in the jeep. Non-Funk 24 glowered at him with her cold and clear assassin's gaze. Non-Funk 77 stared at him with eyes bugging out, his psychotic rage barely restrained. Non-Funk 15 smiled courteously at them both. "Good morning, Non-Funk 24 and Non-Funk 77. I'll be right over. I just have a few more worms to help. You can give me a hand if you want." "Get in the damn jeep!" Non-Funk 24 shrieked. "We need to be at the mines now to start the pumping process and get credit for a full day's shift. We've been over this every morning." "They're just worthless worms anyway," Non-Funk 77 growled between his grinding teeth. "Who gives a shit?" Non-Funk 15 continued to relay the worms off the asphalt and into the grass. To them they aren't worthless. Why, from their perspective, their lives are just as valuable as our lives are to us. They feel suffering and want to live just as we do. Non-Funk 15's spiritual exposition was cut short by the blaring of the jeep's horn. It continued to blast as Non-Funk 24 ground her fist into the steering wheel. To the cacophony, Non-Funk 15 saved the last worm and then hustled over to the jeep. He vaulted over the door and landed in the back seat. "Thanks for your patience," he said with a smile. "Those little fellows really appreciate it. More than I do, even." Non-Funk 24 put her foot down on the accelerator, and the jeep bumped across the rainforest floor. The sun shone through the trees in glorious rays, mingling with the morning fog to create a beautiful golden aura. Non-Funk 15 grinned and took a deep breath of the clean air. "I ought to squash the fucking thing so we can be on time for a change," said Non-Funk 77, turning around in the front seat to glare at Non-Funk 15 with wide murderer's eyes. Non-Funk 15 met his stare calmly, but stopped smiling. "Don't do that," he warned. Non-Funk 77 spit over the side of the jeep, but turned around. All three Non-Funks were former members of the Legions of Mirador, but only Non-Funk 15 had been part of the elite unit Worms. WYRMS. He could slaughter the assassin Non-Funk 24 and the berserker Non-Funk 77 easily, but of the three former killers, only Non-Funk 15 refrained from violence. The last time Non-Funk 77 had tried to step on the worms, Non-Funk 15 had stood in the brute's way. Then the former worm had redirected his opponent's strike and sent him flying into the mud. Non-Funk 15 was never physically challenged again. Their journey finished, the crew pulled up to the Quadlithium mine. It was a water-filled hole in the jungle floor next to a large pump machine. While automatic pumps were available, such convenience was not in accord with the punitive spirit of the penal colony. 3 large wheels were adjacent to the machine. "You'd better run fast to make up for the time you wasted," Non-Funk 24 barked at Non-Funk 15. The defective humans climbed into the interior of the wheels. They ran in place, which turned the wheels around them. These giant hamster wheels powered the machine's generator. There was a gurgling and splashing noise as the pump began draining the water from the mine, which had been filled by the night's deluge of rain. Non-Funk 15 ran at a brisk but comfortable pace, a smile on his face. Exercise always boosted his mood. Non-Funk 77 ran steadily with a fanatical, wide-eyed expression as if he were chasing down imaginary victims to strangle. Non-Funk 24 muttered to herself as she ran, building up momentum and tears. "I'll never get off this moon at this rate. Work all day and only receive credit for a half day just because the weird idiot I'm stuck here with can't be ready on time because he cares more about worms than about me, and there's only so much time before we go through the water ring again, and the mine's flood, and if there was any justice in the world, the Spondulix billionaire bitch who hired me would have gone to jail too, and how can my day get any worse?" she sobbed in exasperation. Boss is here," Non-Funk 77 grunted. Weaving through the trees came a chromium hovercraft, floating above the forest floor with a smooth ride. It parked beside the rusty and dented Jeep. From it emerged a portly and balding man dressed in an auto-cooling suit. "Good morning, Productor Aarons," Non-Funk 24 and Non-Funk 77 bellowed out of obedient habit. Non-Funk 15 wished the supervisor a good morning too, but he seemed to have meant it and added a smile. Productor Aarons walked from his hovercraft to stand beside the muddy hole from which the water was slowly draining. He peered into the abyss pointedly and made an exaggerated facial expression of surprise. "Good morning, Non-Funks," Productor Aarons said. "Awful lot of water in those mines. It's a bit hard to mine quadlithium when it's underwater, wouldn't you say? I had the impression you were here for a corrective purpose rather than for a snorkeling vacation." All at once, Non-Funk 24 and Non-Funk 77 began tripping over each other in their outpouring of blame for Non-Funk 15. Productor Aarons listened with feigned patience, but from his twitching face it was clear he had heard all this before and was struggling to master his exasperation. "Come here, lad," Productor Aarons said to Non-Funk 15. "Let's take a walk together." Non-Funk 15 slowed his run in the giant wheel and hopped out. With an obvious groan, the other 2 Non-Funks picked up the pace to make up for their missing coworker. Non-Funk 15 and Productor Aarons walked side by side through the jungle. By now the sun had come out and the sweltering humidity made Non-Funk 15 sweat, but he maintained his smile. He gazed up at the neon trees, the fluorescent flowering vines, and the vibrant alien birds who sang the strange whistling music of the moon odd. "It certainly is a beautiful day to be alive, Productor," said Non-Funk 15, breaking the silence. The Productor sighed and stopped walking. Non-Funk 15, Hellsynth, the special operative of the elite worms, decorated with the Resurrection Star. How is it that somebody like you can't show up to a simple job on time? I just don't understand you, lad. Of all the non-funks I've met, you're non-functional in the strangest way. Surely you want to rehabilitate and join functional society? Get off this sweltering moon? What is it you need to get on track? Non-Funk 15 stood quietly. He gazed into the distance, as if he were not altogether with Productor Aarons on the jungle moon, but somewhere far off in a place harrowing and godless. Then his eyes refocused and he responded, "It's nice of you to ask me that, Productor. I really do want to rehabilitate and rejoin society. What would help me is if you could tear out the asphalt surrounding my cube. That way the worms wouldn't wander onto it overnight and get stuck in the morning heat. It would all be soft soil, and they could burrow back into the ground safely when the sun comes up. Oh, and the sub-doors to the mines, they creak and squeal when you open them. I find that upsetting. If you could give us some oil to lubricate them, or if I could be someplace else when the doors are opened, that would help me out too, please." Productor Aarons shook his head, sighed, and turned around and strolled back towards the mine entrance. Non-Funk 15 walked beside him. "Obviously, we're not going to waste good government money vandalizing the pavement around a penal resident's cube. It's there to protect the building foundation from the nightly rainstorms. Also, oiling a squeaky door, really? The Productor shook his head. Ask a non-funk a question, get a non-funk answer, I suppose, he muttered. I promise you, Productor, if you do those things for me, I'll be ready for my shift every morning. How about taking some side cures instead? Maybe a refreshing brainwash? No thank you, Productor. I've tried all that, and it won't help me with the worms. Worms? Never mind. And then muttering to himself again, any more talking with these non-funks and I might end up in the mines myself. Tear up the pavement and oil the doors indeed. The two strolling men concluded their walk and arrived back at the mine entrance, now a soggy hole drained of the night's water. Non-Funk 24 and Non-Funk 77 stepped out of the generator wheels, panting and drenched in sweat. They began donning their respirators, helmets, and headlamps. Non-Funk 15 did the same. It was nice talking with you, Productor Aarons. I hope you'll consider my requests. The Productor sauntered over to the hole and nodded his head. Late drain means a late start. Half credit towards your sentence for today. Then he climbed into his hovercar and glided off. Non-Funk 77 ground his teeth, and Non-Funk 24 muttered hysterical tirades to herself. They glared at Non-Funk 15 through their goggles. They made no move against the former elite trooper, however, and simply followed Non-Funk 15 into the hole. The penal residents descended the abyss using ladder rungs pounded into the wall. The sun vanished above them as they disappeared into the soggy bowels of the underground. After a lengthy descent, the shaft ended with a horizontal tunnel. At its end were two great steel doors, rusted from their evenings submerged in water. You open it, Muscles, Non-Funk 24 said to Non-Funk 15. I'd really rather not. In fact, it would be supportive to me if I could climb back up a bit and wait out of earshot while you two open it. Open that damn door before we end up with a quarter-day credit, Non-Funk 24 shrieked. Non-Funk 77 began grunting and clenching his fists. Although Non-Funk 15 would defeat him again, he didn't relish the idea of a mud wrestling match with the serial murderer. Okay, Non-Funk 15 sighed as he staggered up to the door. He braced himself for the physical exertion, but also for the mental assault he was about to endure. Please, Non-Funk 15 thought. Not this time. Please, just this once. Let me open this door without flashing back so I can have a regular day at work. Tensing his beefy muscles, Non-Funk 15 strained at the steel doors. They swung inward with a high-pitched grating sound. I slam in the doors to the psionic cult's hideout. The doors to their underground lair screech with a high-pitched grating sound, left intentionally noisy to alert the criminals inside. The rest of my squad bursts into the room ahead of me while I stand aside. I hear the sound of boiling blood and the agonized screams of roasting humans. When the rest of the worms have entered the den, I rush in with my microwave carbine at the ready. The psionic cabal members have shaved bodies and skulls. Beneath glass domes, their brains are visible. They are all nude and lay scattered on the floor, their innards scalded by our squad's energy weapons. We are the Worms, the most elite unit in the legions of Mirador, and it shows in the instant death delivered to every enemy in the chamber. Where's the primary target, I ask. Probably invisible, one of my fellow worm commandos responds. There is no flash, no cacophonous sound, no pain or blood. There is only the shocking awareness that we have been hit, a full curse for the rest of the squad and a partial curse for me as I was passing through the doorway during the psionics counterattack. A humming sound fills the air as the commandos sweep the empty air with deadly microwave rays. I hear a sizzling and a gasp of pain. A nude man shimmers into sight and slumps forward, dead from cooked internal organs. On his head is wrapped a green and silver cloth, made of flexible solder mask and circuitry. It is the psionic cult's new secret weapon we came here for. I stuff it into a storage compartment in my exosuit. In silence, we slink out of the well-lit underground compound. We emerge into the darkness, the night of the desert planet Iuur. The ground around us is pockmarked with innumerable entrances to other burrows. Uncountable psionic cabalists and the mercenary soldiers lurk beneath, and if alerted, they will swarm us. From some of the holes, The tips of surface-to-orbit missiles lance towards the midnight sky. We catch a wandering guard unawares and fry the man in silence. Then we leap into the cool night, carried by the ion jetpacks on the back of our exoskeletons. Arms extended and legs lifted, we fly like superheroes back towards the extraction site. Below us is the desert at night. Tubular plants with phosphorescent blooms have popped out of their holes to wave in the cool wind. Skittering mice with the skin and fangs of reptiles have left their dens to feast on beetles that run upright. Like the desert life below, our squad must fit activity into the cool of the night before the sun rises and incinerates anything still on the surface. The desert below is not made of sand, but ashes. The night is illuminated with the red flare of a squad member's ion jetpack superheating. The chance of this malfunction is so incalculably small that it has never happened before. It happens now as the man's exoskeleton and flesh are melted, falling to the ash below like grisly rain. Little critters scrabble to lap up the moisture below. Then one by one, like popping firecrackers, each squad member's ion jetpack superheats to incinerate an elite soldier. The unlikely happens in rapid succession a dozen times. The entire squad has burned up midair except for myself. This is no accident, but the psionic's curse, coming to brutal fulfillment upon my comrades. I know the cost of the partial curse upon me is about to be paid. The night is silent, and I can hear that my ion jetpack has failed. I plummet to the ash from the sky. My exoskeleton bears the brunt of the impact, twisting the steel tendons that mirror my muscles and crumpling my legs into a jagged tangle of fractured metal and bone. Despite my elite status as a worm, I gasp in agony. I have crashed in the desert at night, on Iuur, where no living thing has ever been in the daylight without becoming part of the ashen dunes. I have no communicator with the stealth dropship that orbits over the extraction site, as any waves would give a sign of the commando raid that, politically and officially, never happened. I check the cargo compartment in my exoskeleton and see that the stolen wrap of cloth which enhances psionic capabilities has been sheared by the tearing impact. I look down at my unit insignia on the metal arm of my exosuit, a snake-like dragon belching fire and snarling. I'm a worm, I remind myself. Giving up isn't part of who I am. I drag my crumpled body through the ash towards the extraction site. I know it's impossible to arrive there before the sun rises, but I can't helplessly wait for my death. The metal claws that overlay my fingers dig into the ash, and I try to pull myself forward, but the ash slips through my talons. I grip a plant stalk, but it squeaks through my grip, sliding back into its burrow and sealing the opening with sap. I shimmy on my stomach, wriggling back and forth through the gray dust. I crawl forward on my belly while around me the plants wave and the animals zip about, enjoying the night. I crawl, and the battery of my exoskeleton drains empty. My flesh is torn and abraded by the bits of bone in the ash, and my muscles throb in the agony of exertion. I twist my head to see the path I've made on the ashes, and it wanders back and forth. I've been disoriented and not been consistently crawling in the direction of the extraction site. I barely remember where it is anymore. I cough, and the dust puffs up into my face and eyes. I blink away the filth and roll onto my back, still choking on the motes left by Iuur's Solarian wrath. My previous bravado is replaced with humble terror. I gaze up at the panorama of distant stars. I've always thought of myself as an unstoppable commando, but I've never realized how unfathomably vast the universe is and how minuscule I am in it. The abyss of the sky stretches away forever above me. What is out there? There is so much we don't know. Is there perhaps some higher power beyond my conception that looks down on me now? A power that could intervene on my behalf, but cannot or will not help. Perhaps the divine has errands to run and is barely aware of my insignificant suffering and impending death. The stars vanish instantly in a burst of light. Dawn on Iuur is not a gradual rosy glow, but a blast of sudden luminous fire at the edge of the horizon. The distant sun hammers its oblique rays down on me, and I squint to shut out the intensity. Around me, the tubular plants unfurl into arrays of leaves, soaking up the energy. The animals and insects, however, scurry to their burrows, slide within, and close the openings with various alien methods. The heat is unbearable, and the sun has only just crested the horizon. Sweat pours from my body and my uniform is soaked. The dust clings to me as I roll back over. I crawl a bit more, but the moisture pours from my body in the heat. I lay stunned, watching the dawn. The sun races up into the sky so fast I can actually see the shadows moving. Then the plants withdraw into their burrows and seal the openings with secretions. All life on Iuur has fled underground before its mighty solar tyrant, except for myself. I lay exhausted and helpless in the pallid dust. I begin to feel my skin dry and crisp. God, please, I rasp through cracked and bleeding lips. Whatever is out there, please help me. Use your power. Don't turn away. I'm not nothing. I matter. Help me. Through my squinting eyes, I see a dark shape descending on me. Whether it is a dropship or a black angel, I can't tell. The heat cooks my brain and I lose consciousness. This was merciful because then my blood boils in my veins and my skin chars off, killing me. I die there on the ashen wastes of Iuur. A formation of high-ranking legions of Mirador stands with ramrod backs in their silver and black dress uniforms. I march past their ranks, and they lift their microwave carbines in salute. I stop with precision before the master of all our troops, the Megas himself. His powerful chest thrusting out its rows upon rows of gleaming metals, he nods slightly in approval as I approach. We salute each other sharply, and there is silence. In the grandstands of the parade field, the wealthy spondulics look on. The men wear suits of malleable gold, and the women are dressed only in gemstones, carefully placed to provide a semblance of modesty. They observe the ceremony with the ennui of those who can afford any pleasure and have tired of everything. Then, to bellowed slogans from the legions and restrained applause from the wealthy, the Megas pins the resurrection star upon my chest. Then he booms out a speech. Welcome back, Worm Hellsynth. We're glad to have a fine commando like you back among the living. What's more, we were able to study the psionic technology you captured. Now we can defend against these types of loathsome curses in the future. You're a credit to the legions of Mirador. Here's to many more successful missions. Then he bellowed the traditional slogan of the legions, and custom demanded that I repeat it after him. Instead of grunting with gusto, I just stood there quietly. Somehow, the urge to deal death had left me, and I had no exuberance for war. As the awkward silence yawned on, I heard tittering and whispering from some of the spondulics. So I said, "Thank you, Megas. It's a blessing to be alive." It was the wrong thing to say, and the beginning of the end of my military career. The towering Megas looked at me with a grimace. He whispered, "Hellsynth, what's the matter with you?" As time passed and I later confirmed that I was done with killing, I was discharged back into civilian society as a productor. I never knew quite what was so aberrant about me, as I tried to get along, but something had changed and everybody hated me. I smiled more than those around me. I was more polite. I cared about things nobody else cared about. Eventually, I was further downgraded from productor to non-functional. As shameful as this was for me, it was even more bitter for the Spondulix-controlled government and the legions. My corpse, recovered just before the full rays of Iuur's sun could incinerate it, was resurrected at astronomical expense. Instead of buying a restored commando, they got a simpleton who admires flowers and rescues worms. What's the matter with you? I heard that over and over, in many places, from many people. What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? Nonfunk 77 grumbled. You're staring off into space. Do Nonfunk 24 and I have to do everything around here? Nonfunk 15 gazed into the distance, preoccupied with his memories. Slowly, his eyes refocused on the minds around him. Through the light of his headlamp, he could see that he and the other two Nonfunks had completed their shift. The mine's storage canister was filled with shining quadlithium crystals, the result of the day's hard labor. Non-Funk 15 couldn't remember any of it. No wonder he doesn't care about getting off this damn moon. He's not even here to begin with, Non-Funk 24 laughed. Then the three non-funks used a pulley system to haul the crystals up out of the mine shaft. They climbed out and emerged into the light of the setting sun. Through the canopy, the sky was dotted with a band of distant ice crystals. Soon the evening deluge would begin. After securing the quad lithium crystals in the pickup site, the crew climbed into their rusty jeep. Non-Funk 24 drove again, and they bumped their way back through the rainforest to their cubes. She glanced over her shoulder at Non-Funk 15 in the back seat, who was admiring the passing flowers on vines. Non-Funk 15, I'm going to ask you one more time, nicely, she hissed, to be on time tomorrow and not waste the whole morning playing savior to a bunch of squirming bugs. I'll wake up extra early to start on getting them off the asphalt, he replied. She sighed and pulled the jeep up to Non-Funk 15's cube. He got out while she drove off, her eyes vacant. Perhaps she was somewhere else too, in a world of elaborate spongy-like scalas, dancing while killing the rivals of her wealthy patroness with venomous kisses. Non-Funk 15 rubbed his boot along the asphalt paved around his metal cube. It was hard, impervious, rigid and coarse, ugly stuff that scarred the soft, open, nurturing soil of the moon odd. He looked up at the darkening sky and watched the band of ice spheres wax in the sky. They passed into the atmosphere of the moon and were melted. The rain began to pour from the sky, a gift from the rings around the planet Shim. As the ground moistened, little pink worms popped up from the soil to explore a wet and wonderful world. See you in the morning, little buddies, Non-Funk 15 said as he went into his steel cube. After laundering his clothes, showering and eating a canned meal, he reclined in his bunk. He lay awake a long time, listening to the rain pound on the aluminum roof. The next morning, Non-Funk 15 barely noticed the rumble of the approaching jeep or the blaring of the horn. He was too busy ferrying worms off the drying asphalt and back into the soil. He was about halfway through his rescue efforts, and it would take him a little while longer before he finished. Non-Funk 77 grumbled, and Non-Funk 24 shrieked in wrath. "Oh no," she yelled. "Again with the worms, seriously? Again with the worms?" Non-Funk 15 looked up from his sacred work, the divine deliverer of the fragile and helpless. "Yes," he said, "again with the worms."